Christmas with Father came with an extra song for Thanksgiving. We were really excited about that, and it's one that y'all know. It's called Great is Thy Faithfulness. And then it's been a different kind of schedule, and I was not feeling well last week. And so we haven't practiced this in 3 weeks, so I asked Miss Heather this morning to leave the words in. But as we think about Thanksgiving, and Shana has just, talked about that with the kids, the question that comes to my mind is, has God been faithful? Well, absolutely God's been faithful. Is God faithful? Yes, He is in the present. And will He be faithful? Yes, He will, forevermore. And I was looking in Hebrews chapter 6 this morning. Couldn't see the verse. I think it's verse 19. But it talks about, for we have hope, regardless of the craziness in the world, and there's plenty of that in all of our lives, regardless of the hard things. God is faithful, and we have hope, and that hope is sure, and that hope is secure in Jesus. It is our anchor, and it can be our anchor, and when the people around us see that that's our anchor, that speaks to them. This song is pretty much just Great is Thy Faithfulness, but it has a little bridge in it, and this is what kept ringing in my mind when we started practicing it, and I would all week long, this would just keep going through my mind. It says, beginning to end, my life's in your hands. Great, great is your faithfulness. You never let go. And as we go further into hard times and hard things, we can still have that thankfulness that Shana talked about, because our anchor and our hope is in Christ and Christ alone. So if you want to join us on the verses, you are welcome to. It's the same words that are in the book. This one thing I know, great, great is your faithfulness. Oh, great, great is your faithfulness. Oh, great, great is your
So this week you have a paper, if you don't already know the song. We're gonna try a new one. You got my guitar for me. If you'll stand with us in worship this morning, we're just gonna do this one.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. Time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. On that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His
glad that God's faithfulness is not dependent upon our faithfulness? We'd be in a world of trouble, wouldn't we? But God is faithful. Hebrews chapter 2. Hebrews chapter 2. We're looking at Christ. We're looking at the writer of Hebrews as he wrote to Christian Jews and what they were dealing with and how that they were having some trouble letting go of some of their ideas that they had been a part of all of their life, that had been handed down from their ancestors. And we looked and we saw that Christ had superiority over the prophets. Christ is superior over the angels. And then that we started last week and looked at Christ is superior because of his humanity. And how that God himself, wrapped himself in human flesh, came to this earth. And as we looked and saw last week, so that he died for the sin of every man in verse 9. God's awesome. And you know, until I come up with another word, you're going to hear that a lot. The more that I'm reading and the more that I'm studying, I mean, I've been in this for over 40 years, and it's just getting to be more special to me every day that I live. That God's awesome. And when I think about God's awesomeness and how awesome he is and how much that he's there for us, I mean, all you got to do is think about his faithfulness. And that God has never promised anything that he's never come short on. He's always fulfilled every promise. And he always will. And the beautiful thing is that God, and because of his faithfulness, then we have everything that we have. And I know that, you know, as we get older, I was sitting thinking this week how that 20 years ago when we moved here to this area, how that, you know, things that I did then that I wouldn't even dare to think about doing now. Remember there was a boy in high school, one of the church members, and he played football. And I don't even remember the situation now, but the situation was come around to where that I took out after him and I tackled him. You'd be calling 911 if I did that today, because I probably would break something. And I remember one day we was at the church and we was getting up leaves and everything, and myself and one of the deacons, we got to cutting up in the leaves and everything, and I tackled him in the leaves and whatnot. But those days are over. And, you know, just in the last 20 years. But as I think about it, God's faithful. God's awesome. And I'm really, because of the messages that I've been preaching on Sunday night out of Revelation and everything, and a statement that I come across as I was studying for one of the weeks was, how up to date is your testimony? If you are asked to talk about God and you have to go back a year or 2 years or 5 years, then something's wrong with your relationship. How up to date? If you was to be given a testimony today, how up to date is your testimony? And we should talk about what God's done in the past. But we need to see what he's doing every day and be thankful for that as we go into this season. Verse 14 of chapter 2, for as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself, talking about Christ, likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So Christ in his death, remember what he said? He said, I lay down my life. No man takes my life. I lay it down, and I'll take it up again. And what he was saying is that I'm in control. Now, I'm going to die. I'm going to die on the cross. And you're going to see me die. But 3 days later, I'm coming back again. And so, in other words, when we talk about, you know, that, and even the belief today is that the Jews, or that his disciples stole his body. But the angel came down and rolled it back and set up on top of the stone. And the soldiers fell down as dead men. They saw it. And, you know, when you think about it, the angel didn't let Jesus out, folks. He didn't. He didn't come down and let him out. He opened up the grave so we could look in. So we could see that it was empty. And so he took the power away from the devil. The devil had ruled through death and had terrorized, and he took the power away. And to deliver them who through fear of death were all their lives subject to bondage. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. Wherefore, in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be merciful and faithful high priest in the things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people. Folks, it's all him. It's all him. We can't do anything to make reconciliation for our sin. We can't do anything that will appease a holy God for the sins that we have in our life and the sin that we've committed. And so that's why it is his blood. It is his sacrifice. And it says that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest. I mean, you think about it. Jesus, God, is awesome. He's awesome. And that his love for us, Paul wrote in Romans and said, while we were yet sinners, he died. He didn't lay down a bunch of things and say, you got to do this, this, and this to get to the point that you earned my death. Folks, we never would, we never could, and there's no possibility. But he says, I love you. And he stretched his arms out and he hung there on a cross. And he faced not only what man could do, and the hatred and everything that man was there, and how that they had beat him, and how that they had made fun of him, and how that they was there at the cross and around the cross making fun of him, and saying he believed in God. Let him get him down. Folks, I'm so glad that Jesus hung there on that cross. Because I want to tell you something. If the 72,000 angels that Jesus said was waiting, that was right there on the outside, he said, all I have to do is just say it. Just say the word. And I've got 72,000 angels at my disposal. Man, I'll tell you something. When David looked and saw the angel standing there with his sword drew, thousands of people died as the judgment of God, if you read there in 2 Samuel. And I want to tell you something. If God unleashed 72,000 angels on this earth in judgment, there wouldn't be anything left. And they could have cut. I mean, I have tried to imagine what it would be to look and to watch them come down and take Jesus off of the cross. That'd be a picture that would be awesome. But that'd be a picture you wouldn't want to see. Because if they had come down, and even though he could have, even though as they was making fun of him, if he had come off of the cross and said, no, I've decided you're not worth it. I've decided that I'm not going to do it. Then I'll tell you something, folks, judgment would have failed. And we would be in one more dire strait with hopelessness. Can you imagine living in this world today without hope? Can you imagine living here today and facing and hearing and seeing the things that's going on without the hope of something better? Jesus said, I go away to prepare a place for you. And if I go away to prepare a place for you, I'll come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. But he started off that chapter in John, and he says, let not your heart be troubled. And folks, we do. As the song Shayna's saying, we do have times of fear. We do have times of doubt. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm 64 years old, and I have went through a lot of elections. There has never been an election that has scared me as much as this one. Folks, we don't know what is in our future. And I guarantee you, we have not seen anything to what it's going to be. We need to understand. And this is the thing we need to grab a hold of. And we need to be preparing our family. We need to be praying for our families. We need to be praying for our loved ones. We need to be doing and making sure that as much as we can, that everyone that we know knows Jesus Christ. Because I want to tell you something, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. We have not, in other words, we say, well, the best is yet to come. I want to tell you something. If we're living in the last days, the best is not yet to come in this earth as far as politics, as far as the political situation is. This world is going to get worse and worse and worse until Jesus brings judgment upon this earth. And you know what's going to trigger it? The church being raptured out. The church is going to get raptured out. When it does, all hell's going to break loose. The Antichrist, and I'm going to be honest with you, we're getting a taste of what the world is going to face under the Antichrist. And the demands that are being made by certain things and whatnot. We're getting a taste of it, of how that one person can just make one statement and it becomes a uniform thing. The Antichrist is going to come in, he's going to set himself up and he's going to say, you ain't going to buy anything and you ain't going to sell anything unless you've got the mark. That's no different than what we're facing today. Folks, I guarantee you the fear that has gripped this country, the fear that is gripping people and everything and whatnot, is nothing to the fear that's going to grip Ben. You can't buy anything. You can't sell anything unless you've got his mark. And see, they're not going to buy into it. They're not going to understand that when they accept that mark, when they accept it, then they're dooming themselves to hell. You can't accept the mark and be a Christian. You can't accept the mark and do that because the Bible's plain. You're down. You're down to an eternal hell when you accept the mark of the beast. And to not accept it means that you'll be persecuted. To not accept it means that you'll be made fun of. And see, the thing of it is, I'm glad I'm not going to be here. But what are we going to have to face until that takes place? What are we going to have to face in this country? I mean, Christians are being hated. I was looking at it again last night. And there is an organization that says that they're Christian. And they have demanded, said they had over 10,000 Christian names on this petition to have Franklin Graham taken away from Samaritan's Purse. That he's not the CEO. They don't want him there. You know why? Because he had prayer at the Republican convention. Because he supported Trump. I mean, it's plain. It's in the article. Look it up. And they despise him. And it's talking about how Christians are ashamed of him. Well, I'll tell you something. I ain't ashamed of him. I'm proud of him. He is awesome. His daddy would be proud of him. And folks, I want to tell you something. The time's coming when you and I are going to be put to the test. Are we going to stand for Christ or are we going to denounce him? And this is the whole thing. I try, and I think I've done fairly well to stay away from politics. But I'll tell you something, there's going to be some things that I believe is going to take place in the near future. Do you know that this administration that's going in, they are for letting down to the age of 8 years old decide if they're going to be male or female. God told Ezekiel, he said, you eat this and you go preach the word. And he said, you tell and you warn. And he said, but this is the thing he said, they're not going to listen to you. And I remember when Kenneth Riding shared that with us at Fruitland. He was my homiletics professor. And he shared, he said, folks, boys, I'll tell you something. He said, the time's coming. And he said, it's getting worse and worse and worse. He said, you're going to stand, you're going to preach God's word, and they're not going to listen. God told Ezekiel, they're not going to listen, but you do it anyway. I want to tell you something. Our society is getting sick. And this administration that's going in is going to undo the gains that we got against abortion. And so, in other words, late-term abortions, partial birth abortions, where they pull the baby out except for the head, and they take and suck the brain out and kill that baby before it's born. They've even got a thing which President Trump said no to and would not let it go, but they've got a thing that they're going to put in that if it was an abortion and the baby made it through and wasn't aborted, that the mother has so many days afterward to decide if she wants that baby to live or not. I want to tell you something. You can't get more pagan in the Word of God than we're living today. We're sacrificing babies right and left. I want to tell you something. Christians are going